time for another Stranger Things analysis. I'm going to be talking about why Mike's love confession was not genuine and what is in the actual text to show us this. So this is where Mike and Elle's conflict begins in season 4. Elle confronts Mike about not saying that he loves her ever. And Mike deflects and kind of gaslights her. He brings up the fact that she's a superhero, and she doesn't really seem to like that. Mike is giving Elle the impression that he loves her for her superpowers or that he has some kind of hero worship complex, which he kind of does. Elle sends Mike a note saying that she's going to become a superhero again. That is because Mike has now given Elle the impression that he sees her as a superhero and only a superhero. Mike and Will have 2 conversations about this conflict with Elle, one in Jonathan's room and one here in the desert. And in both conversations, Mike dances around the fact that he can't say I love you. He does not even tell Will, his best friend, what the problem is. He says he can't say that thing or that he should have explained himself. And then Will says blah, 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 what if they don't like the truth? And we see Mike looking very deep in thought, and he nods along to what Will is saying, whether he realizes it or not. This tells us that Mike really truly doesn't love Elle romantically. He knows it, and there's a reason he hasn't said it. This conflict comes up again in the van. Mike starts explaining to Will that he feels like Superman fell onto his doorstep and it was dumb luck, not fate, and he feels inferior to Elle. He makes it very clear that he wants to be needed by Elle, and he feels like he needs Elle. Notice how he used the word need instead of love. This further shows us that in the 3rd act of this season, Mike still has a hero worship problem. Does he care about Elle? Of course. Does he romantically love Elle? I don't think so. He sees himself as inferior to Elle, even this far along. Elle rejoins the group, and they have a little moment here in the Surfer Boy Pizza that they're kind of joking around and being silly, and then Mike brings up their argument. It doesn't look to me like what he's about to say is that he loves her. It looks like he's going to try and explain why he couldn't say that he loved her. If the Duffers really wanted us to believe that Mike loved Elle, this would have been the perfect time for a love confession, a low-stakes situation where he can really express himself honestly. Instead, they chose to give us this. Will encourages Mike to, quote, keep going after Mike calls for Elle a few times. Mike's initial reaction is not to confess love. It's only after Will tells him to keep going that he decides to spit out what he thinks Elle wants to hear. The problem is, in this love confession, he once again talks about her superpowers. This shows us that for the entirety of season 4, Mike feels inferior to Elle, and he fundamentally does not understand what Elle actually wants from him.